you'll become a world changer. That's why we're offering an in-depth worldview training course called Activate. 13 different professors teaching 18 sessions, all available online, including a printed workbook to help you apply what you've learned and 1-year access to AFA streaming content to give you even more resources. Find out more about Activate and sign up today at activate.afa.net.
Welcome to Real Truth for Today with Pastor Jeff Schreve, Senior Pastor of First Baptist Church in Texarkana, Texas. Now, here's Pastor Jeff.
Well, good morning and welcome to Real Truth for Today. Pastor Jeff Schreve here. Hope you're having a great Thursday morning. I wanted to read to you from Matthew chapter 10 and verse 16. Jesus tells his disciples, he's sending them out, and he says this, "Behold, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. So be shrewd as serpents and innocent as doves." That's a tall order, to be shrewd as serpents and innocent as doves. But that's what the Lord commands us to do. And he's telling us right off the bat, hey, this is going to be a dangerous mission because you're sheep in the midst of wolves. But he's going to be with us. We don't need to be afraid, as the Lord told Joshua in Joshua chapter 1, "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not tremble or be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." Now, what we like to talk about on Real Truth for Today is we like to engage Christians in a biblical worldview, looking at the issues that are taking place in our world and especially in America, and look at it from a biblical lens. And I have invited a friend of mine to come on today as we talk about the culture and current events, and that's Ryan Helfenbein. He is the Vice President of Communications and Public Engagement at Liberty University and the founding Executive Director of the Standing for Freedom Center. That was previously the Falkirk Center for Faith and Liberty. Ryan is a fellow Texas Longhorn, got a BA in economics from the University of Texas, has an MDiv from the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, and he served as an advisor, public information officer for Kentucky Governor Matt Bevin. And so, Ryan, welcome to the program.
Hey, Jeff, good morning. It's good to be on with you.
Well, okay, so I learned that this morning. I didn't know you were a Longhorn.
Yeah, so I am a Longhorn, hook 'em, but now I serve an institution, obviously, that is in Virginia, and we are the Flames, so I say go Flames all the time.
Yes.
And I'm very proud of Liberty University, and of course the place I serve. But yeah, I went to UT for my undergrad, and I still watch Texas football.
When did you graduate?
I graduated back in the 2005 year, and that was the Mac Brown era, and we had Vince Young as our quarterback.
Okay, so were you there when we won the national championship?
I graduated a year early, so I was already in seminary in the year that would have been my senior year. So all my buddies got to go to the Rose Bowl, and I did not get to go. Oh,
wow. Yeah, so I got to do a chapel for the Horns when they played Arkansas in Fayetteville. That was the year they won. I think they won the Rose Bowl, so the 2003-2004 season, and got to know Mac, and great experience. My daughter was a Texas Angel when she was there during the end of the Colt McCoy, Jordan Shipley era. So
that's a good era.
Yes, so
Very good.
I'm a big Longhorn fan. I married an Aggie, and so not a rabid Aggie, though, so she doesn't give me a lot of grief about things. But, okay, so Ryan, want to talk to you today about what's going on in our world, what's going on in America. I know that you keep your finger on the pulse of things, lots of things going on. What do you take away from the Michigan vote on Tuesday, where you have this socialist Islamist that won the primary?
Yeah, so I mean, it's obvious to me. It signals to me that there is a far more radical element of the Democratic Party, the Democratic Socialists of America, the DSA. They are being mainstreamed. And Chuck Schumer, who has been rather dodgy as party leadership, more recently said that the Democratic Party is a big tent party. And if you're watching the races around the country, of course, we saw Mamdani, no big surprise there, except for this is the first time that you had a candidate that was so outspoken in his own Islamism and so outspoken in his socialism, and then now wants to enact policies. Fast forward in Michigan, now you have a primary where the representative for the Democratic Party is Islamic, is socialist, and is going to try and mainstream that message across America. The question is whether or not that actually will work for the country. And the party could very well be split in Michigan. Of course, I'm not on the ground there to know exactly the situation, but the greater picture right now, this would be kind of a positive, but then also a negative for conservatives. In a sense, on the positive side, so many of these candidates that are being run state by state by state are absolutely radical. And for an independent voter, which there are many independent voters, if you look at a mapping of where people line up, you've got your dogged conservatives that might be at 35-40%, and then you got more of your dogged Democrats that might be somewhere between 35-40-45%. That middle part is that 15 to 20. Those guys have to be persuaded every time there's an election of which way they're going to vote. They don't necessarily have a party loyalty, and they're the undecided voter. Those guys look at some of this stuff, and they may not be comfortable with socialism. They may not be comfortable with Islamicism. They may not be comfortable with these radical elements. And so in many ways, that will bode well for Republicans. But here's the flip side of all of that. The part that is very concerning for Republicans is still the issue of affordability. And I've had a lot of conversations about this. I'm on a college campus. I'm with Gen Z. I hear them all the time. And, it is not something where you say, quit your complaining about $20 burritos, right? Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Stop spending so much money on coffee. You're not going to be able to Starbucks save your way towards being debt-free out of college. You're not going to be able to Starbucks save your way in order to own a home. The average age of a new homeowner in America is around 41 years of age. We have a huge problem. I think it's of the poorest, only 4 in 10 can actually afford a starter home of young Americans. I mean, it's bad. A number of people, I think, under the age of 35, and I forget the exact number, are moving back home to live with their parents. And it's not because they're jobless. They actually have work, and they're working multiple jobs. They can't afford it. I heard this statistic the other day, Jeff. 1 in 4 Americans have defaulted on their credit cards. They are paying for things at the grocery store, at the gas pump, and they cannot afford it. Let's be honest. So as I say this, I don't look at this and say, all of that can be blamed on Iran. All of that can be blamed on what just happened the last 90 days or 100 days or something like that. Of course, that's ridiculous. This is the Biden era economy. It lags. There's a lead and a lag. The choices you make today will reap either benefits or punishments years from now. The choices that were made during the lockdowns with Anthony Fauci running the country is what printed $8 to $10 trillion in national debt. That's why you have inflation, and the way back is a crawl. It's not a leap. It's not a brisk walk. It's not a jog. It is a crawl to get us back there, and we have to do the right things today. The biggest concern for conservatives heading into the midterm is going to be tackling affordability. And you cannot give this boomer message of quit your complaining, quit whining, go to Taco Bell. We have to have sensible solutions that are believable, that are practical. This is where Democrats, especially Democratic Socialists, message so much better. They take that grievance and they turn it immediately towards, that's why you need to vote for me, because you can't afford burritos. And we have to wake up. And I think where Trump was messaging in 2024 was so much better, especially among the younger generation, and that he's kind of lost that mojo and has got to get it back.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. The thing for me is I look at a businessman like Donald Trump. Obviously, he understands economics. Zoran Mandami does not understand economics.
Exactly.
And he doesn't read history because his government-run grocery store is going to be an unmitigated disaster. Those people, he's going to turn that thing into a garbage dump in no time. And I don't understand. So you're dealing with college students. Do they study about socialism? Do they understand that socialism doesn't work? It's never worked. It cannot work. It's just doomed for failure?
No. Actually, you hit on a great question. Okay, so this is perfect. No, they don't. In fact, they don't study Western literature. They don't study Western history. They don't study math. They don't study science. So much of our institutions are bourgeois institutions where nihilism is being promoted, where everything is about identity, everything is about grievance, everything is about victimhood. Most colleges and universities across the country, unless you come to a place like Liberty University, most of them are indoctrination centers. I'm not kidding. And not only that, but you're going into debt for it. And so, no, they haven't learned this. And then secondly, the problem is in an election cycle is not the time in which you become professorial. It's not the time in which let's become Ron Paul and be this college professor trying to school the country on how dumb they are about economic policy. Yes, all of that is true. Right. But in an election cycle, it is 100% raw emotion, and you have to be able to inspire people or make them angry, either way, but motivate them to vote. It is 100% raw emotion, and that's the problem. And so the time for teaching is not exactly right now. Right now is you're trying to persuade somebody who has the power of that vote to vote for this candidate and not that candidate. And that's where we are. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head. College students, by and large today, are not trained in classics. They don't have basic economics. They don't know micro, macro. They don't know any of this stuff. And they have been indoctrinated.
Well, it's sad to see it, and then we all pay for it, because if you have an unintelligent, ignorant electorate, then and you vote for somebody like a Zoran Mandani or like this guy in Michigan, those guys aren't stupid. They know what they're trying to do. And as the scripture says, you sow the wind, you reap the whirlwind. That's not a good thing to do.
No, absolutely not. You do reap what you sow. There are consequences. And of course, and this is, again, I'm reminded what John Stonestreet said, all ideas have consequences. Bad ideas have victims. And the problem with the victimology today is that actually it produces more victims. So the more socialism you get, the more victims it will create. And the more victims it creates, the more socialism you're going to get. And so this is a downward spiral, and that is why we must stop it. We must end it in America. And I think that's why this election is so important, even for a state like Texas.
For sure. We're talking to Ryan Helfenbein. He is the Vice President of Communications and Public Engagement at Liberty University and the founding executive director of the Standing for Freedom Center. And I love Liberty University. I've never been on campus, but love the place. I think that one of the few schools that stands for truth, doesn't waver. Jerry Falwell Sr. would be so pleased to see how the school is doing. And so, Ryan, it's a privilege to have you as my guest today. We're going to talk more with Ryan Helfenbein when we come back from the break. You're listening to Real Truth for Today on American Family Radio. I'm your host, Pastor Jeff Schreve. We'll be right back.
Hello, Tim Wildman here, President of American Family Association and American Family Radio. Hey, maybe you've heard some of my other announcements about our tours in March 2027. We are going to Greece and we're going to Italy. 2 separate tours, but you can do both if you want to. The first tour is called The Footsteps of Paul, which will be going to many of the places covered in the book of Acts that happened in Greece. The other tour is Italy, and one of the places we're going to be going is Venice, and we're going to ride the gondola that Paul took on his trip to Venice. You can read about that in the Bible too. I'm just kidding. But you can call it a gondola or gondola, I don't care. But if you want to go on one of our tours in 2027, go to tours.afa.net. That's tours.afa.net.
If we want to be happy, if we want to celebrate, we should do it spiritually. We do this by filling our minds and our hearts with thanksgiving so that our gratitude overflows into songs of praise to the Lord.
Dr. David Jeremiah continues his series, Powerful Principles from Proverbs, next time on Turning Point.
5:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
If we do all of those other things, but the gospel is not being proclaimed, we will continue to see the erosion of our nation from the inside. Religion informs politics. Politics touches every aspect of our lives. And as the scripture discusses that the Lord has made his people to be living epistles, what story are we a part of?
Join Abraham Hamilton III on the Hamilton Corner, weekdays at 5 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
This is the Lost in Translation Ministry Minute. Here now is your host, Dr. Baruch Korman.
One who is wise in spiritual things, when they hear the instructions of God, when they understand what is God's will for their life, they are going to be individuals that have a strong desire to implement it at once. There's an urgency for every believer to obey the truth of God. And there is an inherent relationship between God's truth and a kingdom experience. Someone who rejects the truth of God, they will not have a kingdom experience.
Learn more about the teaching ministry of Dr. Baruch Korman at loveisrael.org. You'll find videos on almost any biblical topic on his YouTube page and on the My Bible Study app. That's loveisrael.org.
This is Real Truth for Today. Podcasts of the program are available on the podcast page at afr.net. Now, back to Pastor Jeff Schreve.
Welcome back to the program. We're talking to Ryan Helfenbein. He is the Vice President of Communications and Public Engagement at Liberty University and the founding director, executive director of the Standing for Freedom Center. He's also the host of the Give Me Liberty podcast. Ryan, you wear a lot of hats there. Let me ask you.
Including this one.
Yeah, including that one, Liberty University. What's the feeling on campus concerning Trump and politics and the midterms and all that? What do you feel from that?
Yeah, so I will say this candidly. Our students are out right now. We're coming back to school in August. I have, of course, at the Freedom Center, I've got young guys that work for me, and then we have student workers as well. So I get to poll these guys. But once here in just a few weeks, if you were to ask me that question, and I were to ask most of the students, here's what I think I would probably hear. most of our students, most all of our students represented here are very, very conservative. And I would define that, of course, biblically first, speaking not to the political question, but of course to just faith and how faith and morality inform our understanding of politics, what it means to be an American, to be a citizen, what our responsibility and stewardship of that citizenship is. They're taught these things, and many of them come to Liberty already believing many of these things. We host here at Liberty so many speakers. We've had Senator Josh Hawley, we've had Senator Ted Cruz, and I mean, I could go on and on and on. We had Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage come to our university. We've had the Israeli ambassador come to Liberty just more recently. And so our students, by and large, are very supportive, primarily as Christian conservatives who believe the Word of God, but then also recognize that this Bible is not disconnected with how we think about, public policy. The question in terms of like the more finite things, I would say by and large, many of them are going to be supportive, generally speaking, of the president and of various policies. But in terms of how they think maybe the economy is going or how they think the war in Iran is going, I don't yet know, but I would be curious to find out. I think the general thing online that we're seeing, especially among Z, is that this is needless. Why are we getting involved in this kind of conflict? This seems like a potential quagmire. Hey, yes. We've seen this movie before. Didn't W do the same thing? And of course, I would give huge pushback on those ideas, but that is the general reaction. And the question is what's going to happen next? And I think none of us know, if we're being honest. We need to be humble in all of this, but I will say this, being an older millennial and being in between the boomer generation and also the Zoomer generation, I look at this and I have a lot of sympathy for how Trump views Iran because, growing up my entire life, I've only ever known about the threat of Islam, and they are the leading sponsor of terror, and they've created havoc all over the world. And I'll say one more thing. I was a college student when we went into Afghanistan. I was a college student when we went into Iraq, and I was a big supporter of President Bush. But then things kept going and they kept going. And the question was, if we're going after terrorists, why aren't we going after the ground zero? Why aren't we going after the mecca of terrorism? Why aren't we going after the big gorilla, the chief leading sponsor of terror in Iran? Why are we going after them? That kind of made no sense. It seemed like a proxy, and the real bad guys were kind of left alone. And that's, I think, where Trump is trying to handle what should have been done back when we had political will to do it. Should have been done 25 years ago, right. And it was never done.
Right. Well, it is one of those things. It's hard to see an end to it because I've used this illustration before, Ryan. It's that Monty Python situation where the guy's fighting, he gets his arm cut off, another arm cut off, a leg cut off, another leg cut off, and he's like, it's just a scratch, I can keep going.
Right.
And it's like, okay, unless we send troops in there, or unless we drop nuclear bombs on them, it's like, how do you get them to quit?
Right. Yeah, you're dealing with an ideology. I mean, they're looking for what, the 12th Imam. Right. They're looking to set up a caliphate. The entire state is run by, you think about Old Testament Israel, you think about a rabbinical system, you think about the Sanhedrin and the ruling class. Their entire structure of government is ruled by radical Shiites that have been to Islamic schools, and their entire eschatology is built into their politics. There is no separation of mosque and state. Your average American cannot even begin to conceive of this sort of hardline religion. and it's manifestly, present in every policy decision they make. Now, that doesn't mean that every single person in that country is a radical, but those in leadership certainly are.
Right.
And they are not going to go quietly into the night.
No.
They will fight tooth and nail to the end. They promote terror against their own people. There are over 40,000 people they've killed this year. They still run state executions of high-profile people. We saw more recently, they executed one of their more famous athletes who was a protester, and they do this to scare the nation. They do this to terrify the people. And so, going in there to know you could bomb a bunker tomorrow. You could kill another 20 of those guys. And there's new guys that will come right up into the ranks, and they're just as hardline. They're just as much of an ideologue. They're just as radical and committed to doing the same thing those guys were doing. And so that's the problem that I think we're up against.
Okay, Ryan, do you think that President Trump understands that?
I think he does, in a sense. I don't know if look, our intelligence, of course, is reporting on stuff all the time. I'm just going to say one thing about some of this. I saw, something last year where clearly when we went in June of 2025 with our B-2 bombers, and we bombed the uranium enrichment facilities and places where they were, doing all kinds of development of a nuclear bomb. We did all of that stuff. It seemed as though even internally, his own hand-selected guys were not with him, and I'm obviously more clearly, Joe Kent was one of them. He was more of a libertarian type. He was even leaking information. It was very clear what was going on. If you were kind of watching that thing unfold over the next year, and then he resigns in protest in April, insisting that there's going to be boots on the ground, et cetera, et cetera. And clearly that has not happened yet. But, in terms of the day-to-day, what information is he getting? you've got, it appears you've got a Rubio that's a little bit more supportive. He's carrying a lot of water on this. You've got a Vance who obviously is very loyal to the president. There might be some healthy disagreement in terms of approach, or to what degree this is important. Why are we doing this now, et cetera, et cetera. And then you've got Israel, and there's all kinds of complications right now when it comes to the American people, public sentiment, and opinion about Israel. Democratic Party just absolutely is fomenting hatred, suspicion, conspiracy theory, et cetera, et cetera. You've even got the far, far radical elements on the right, the fake right, that are doing the same. And this puts Trump in a weird situation in terms of intelligence gathering, in terms of, conducting military operations. How closely do we align ourselves right now with Israel in order to handle this stuff in Iran? What information is he getting at any given moment? I don't know. I've always seen Trump as a more pragmatist type.
Right.
And that has been one of those things that has helped him in business. He doesn't get caught up. He's not a philosopher, and I wouldn't even, peg him as the guy that is as a true conservative. But I do see him as a deal maker, and I think he's principled in his deal making, actually, far more principled than other so-called conservative presidents that promised us so much but didn't give us any of it. So I think Trump is actually a much better leader because of that pragmatism. But I do know this. You go back and you watch, Jeff, these interviews in the early 80s that, this mogul in New York City is giving, and he's giving these opinions, and he talks about the price of Japanese electronic consumer goods. He's talking about, Russia, which at the time was still the Soviet Union. And then, and then he mentions Iran, and he talks about Khomeini, and how terrible they are, and that somebody's got to do something to stand up against them. And he still had in memory, like many did, Jimmy Carter, and just what an embarrassment all of that was during the hostage crisis. So I think that he actually sees them as the real threat that must be dealt with, and I appreciate that.
Right. Well, let me shift gears a little bit on you as we talk about what's going on in Iran, and we think about the radical Muslims. Well, that is not an ocean away. That's coming here. It's gaining ground. This is something that Charlie Kirk said. This was being circulated just recently on the X platform. Charlie Kirk, his warning before he died.
Islam is not compatible with Western civilization. Islam is at odds with all the freedoms that we enjoy. They do not believe in any separation between mosque and state. They do not believe in freedom of speech or freedom of expression. They do not believe in the freedom to criticize the government. The practices that we enjoy so great here in the United States of America. And here's the one thing that's the kicker. You have this axis, again, the red-green axis, this Marxism-Mohammedanism axis. What do they have in common? Even though a lot of the Marxists are lesbians or gays or transgenders, they get along with the Muslims. They get along because they hate us. They hate the West and they hate the United States of America.
All right. I think he hit the nail on the head. What do you say?
Charlie was almost never wrong. Okay, he was almost never wrong. I knew him well, so there are a couple of moments where I'd say, not quite so right. But no, he is spot on, and in fact was saying this much earlier than many politicians. And this is why, of course, I miss my friend and miss him dearly. But he, by the way, we're just talking about this Iranian conflict. Charlie's the guy that would talk to the president. I mean, Charlie had a phone where he was talking all the time and giving advice and giving counsel, and also had the ear of the president and saying what the American people thought, because he was on the ground all the time on college campuses and could say firsthand, these are what people think. Right. But on this issue of Islam, it's here. It's in America. We allowed for this to happen. The question is what is the way forward? Right. And one of the things that has to be so abundantly clear to every single person listening is that Sharia law is completely 100% incompatible with the U.S. Constitution. It is a direct threat. We outlawed actual communism in the 1950s because it would supplant our Bill of Rights. It would take away your right to private property. It would take away your free speech. We did that in the 1950s. And so there are many people that have, this is my, I'm a communist, whatever. But the idea of actually enacting laws that are communistic are unconstitutional. It's the same way with Sharia law and setting up Sharia courts that run as sort of parallel institutions that have binding authority on what people do. When it comes to women in particular, in Islam, Sharia law does not afford them equality or equal protection under the law when it comes to men. They have to have special trials in which elders are deciding the fate of a young woman or a teenage girl. Imagine a rape case. Sharia law has honor killings. It's completely 100% medieval, but it is completely incompatible with the Christian West and the Constitution. And many secularists today, they look at Islam as like, what's your problem? They're just praying on a rug. Right. What's the deal with that? Why are you so bigoted? Why are you discriminatory against people practicing religion? No, but it is a totalizing worldview that has everything to do with not only prayer, but literally what happens in the political world. And what we see actually is that most secularists that are, living in Europe right now today, they are terrified of Islam. They do not want to confront Islam. secularists are not afraid of Christians, but they are terrified of radical Islam. And when that happens, when that comes for America and finally unmasks itself and rears its ugly head, I tell you right now, the secularists and the liberal politicians will roll. They will absolutely fall over. They will not fight.
Yeah, that's so true. We're talking to Ryan Helfenbein, and you're listening to Real Truth for Today. Pastor Jeff Schreve here. When we come back from the break, we'll be taking your calls, 888-589-8840. That's 888-589-8840. If you have a question for Ryan or a comment, we would love to hear from you. So pick up the phone and let's talk.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
Discover the story of the culture warrior Don Wildman and how he went head-to-head with Hollywood, Playboy, the homosexual agenda, and the Disney empire. The movement Don started paved the way for Christians to boldly stand for truth and righteousness in a hostile culture. Watch Culture Warrior today for free. Visit culturewarrior.movie.
AFA Action takes attacks on the family seriously. The enemies of the family constantly employ new tactics to try to sneak past our radar. They know if we stand together, their evil plans will fail. Your gift to AFA Action allows us to stay vigilant against their onslaught. And if you give this month, you'll receive access to the Cultural Institute video When Your Faith is Illegal by Frank Harbor on AFA Stream as our thanks. You can make your gift today at afaaction.net. It's funny how you spend so much time planning and preparing for the future, working to fulfill your dreams, achieve your goals. Then one day something changes, and you find yourself thinking about what you'll leave behind. Is your legacy secure? Maybe you heard about charitable giving at some point, but never gave it much thought until now. Does it really make a difference? And how does it work? That's where AFA Foundation can help. AFA is a donor-supported ministry, and charitable giving is a great way to help us fulfill the Great Commission and protect families for generations to come. Whether you know about things like charitable gift annuities, bequests, trusts, and wills, or not, AFA Foundation will not only provide in-depth answers to your questions, we'll even help you set everything up. Why not get started today? Take some time to visit afafoundation.net and learn how you can make a lasting legacy. afafoundation.net.
One of the greatest concentrations of young people and one of the most fertile missionary fields is the community of students in public schools, and we have a way to reach them. It's Truth for Youth Bible Week with Revival Fires International.
I'm so happy that my friend gave me the Truth for Youth Bible. It healed so many emotional hurts that I had. It changed my life.
More than 30,000 young people have received Christ over the years with the help of the Truth for Youth Bible. We'll give one free Truth for Youth Bible to every student between the ages of 13 and 18 who promises to pass it along to a friend.
And there was even a comic in there that talked about the dangers of witchcraft in ways that I never even considered. And there was a page in Truth for Youth that showed me how to give my heart to Jesus. I just prayed, and Jesus forgave me of my sins.
Visit tfy.org anytime or call 800-733-4737 between 8:30 a.m. and 4 p.m. to order or donate. It's Truth for Youth Bible Week with Revival Fires International and American Family Radio. If you'd like to contact Pastor Jeff, email pastorjeff@fromhisheart.org. Now, back to Real Truth for Today with Pastor Jeff Schreve.
Welcome back. We're talking to Ryan Helfenbein, and he is the Vice President of Communications and Public Engagement at Liberty University, the founding Executive Director of the Standing for Freedom Center, and also the host of the Give Me Liberty podcast. And we're talking about current events. You know, Jesus said, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. He never told us it was going to be easy to be his witnesses. We're called to speak the truth in love, as Jesus said in Revelation chapter 2, verse 10 to the church in Smyrna, be faithful until death, and I will give you the crown of life. And so we need to know that our job is to be his witnesses, to be a faithful witness, to stand up for truth. And as Christians here in America, what do? We seek for the welfare of the city, Jeremiah chapter 29, and we do and conduct ourselves in a way and get involved politically in a way that would benefit society. Okay, so Ryan, I want to play you a clip. I played this yesterday on the program from Scott Jennings because I think it's a great word, and it's a great word to pastors especially, and I want to get you to comment on it. So this is about 40 seconds.
We don't need, the trouble with subtlety is that not everybody gets it. We need unsubtle communicators, people who will tell the truth in an unsubtle, plain-spoken fashion, because there is a market out there. People are desperate for people who will dump the pablum and get serious about the crisis and the emergency that this country is in. That's why Trump won, and when he's gone, the people who win again, they'll never be able to emulate or replicate it. But the one lesson is, do not be subtle, do not pull your punches, and do not let them pull the wool over the eyes of the American people when it comes to the crisis that we face.
Ryan, we're seeing a lot of guys in pulpits that want to be nuanced, want to be Tim Keller, want to dance around things and just, I don't want to offend. There's this third way. There is no third way. There's black and white. There's good and evil. And we need guys to stand up and speak up so everybody gets it. This is right and this is wrong. So comment on that if you would.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, Jennings, by the way, we had him at Liberty University just this last year for one of our conferences, and I could not agree with him more. We are not in an era right now. Things have changed so much culturally, and we talked about the education of the general populace in America, and the truth and the reality is that nuance doesn't land in a time like this. Most of the time, people are confused by it, by the complexity of what people are trying to do. They're trying to be artful or have decorum. I delivered a talk in D.C. just yesterday about the twinfold challenges or crisis of both Gnosticism and nihilism as it applies to politics and culture. I was talking to some Hill staffers, and I said, Gnosticism, if I may, Gnosticism is this whole idea of secret knowledge and defined the woke movement for such a long time. You can't know or understand. It creates victim ideologies and victim groups, and identity politics are around Gnosticism. And it's basically also a certain element of the Republican Party that, kind of defined Mitt Romney, kind of defined John McCain. And it's this idea of, loser republicanism, quite honestly. There's a certain kind of decorum. You can kind of go a middle way, but you don't advance the ball when it comes to abortion, when it comes to the issue of marriage, protecting the family, when it comes to education and having educational freedom. None of them ever would move the needle on any of those issues whatsoever. Trump did. But what's interesting is that Gnosticism gets you to arrive at this kind of conclusion that you can just kind of be a philosopher and you don't ever have to have any pragmatic solutions. And so there's that. And then what happens is the youngest generation is succumbing to this idea of nihilism. Nihilism is that nothing matters. Everything's a meme. Everything's a joke. And we have this disaster, but it's not going to get better. It's only going to get worse. It's doom and gloom. Let's just burn it all down. The burn it all down Zoomers are coming behind the trail of the Gnostic boomers. And I'm saying that, I'm not laying that charge on anyone. I don't want to offend anyone on this program. But what I am saying is there were boomer politicians for such a long time that sat on third base. They never hit a triple. But the greatest generation did. And they sat on third base and they squandered this national inheritance, drove up the national debt, voted for their own interest, voted for the oldest part of the population at the expense of the young. The youngest generation is now saddled with debt. They're upset. They have not been educated. And by the way, who sent them to the public schools and the government schools? Who did that, right? Mom, dad? And they're jobless and they're hopeless, and they need a message that actually makes sense. Jennings couldn't be more right. He could not be more right.
Yeah, well said. Well, we're going to the phone lines, 888-589-8840, and we have Tom on the line from Arkansas. Tom, welcome to Real Truth for Today.
Hi, good morning, Pastor. And again, another great program. Just a quick comment on the baseball analogy. that is a really great analogy, but I can promise you my wife would not understand one word of it. So, but that being said, I'm curious, are there any courses at Liberty on the pastoral track that incorporate what we're talking about today on the program into how to preach? And I guess the follow-up would be, given that question, are there any, like, if you're a dental hygienist, you have to take CEUs every year. Are there any follow-up courses that pastors take to stay current, to stay up to date on what's going on in the world? So these are issues that are so important to be addressed.
Yeah. Yes. Well, you ask a great question. And first of all, I'd encourage anyone listening, go to liberty.edu to find out more. We have over 15 colleges, including a divinity school, actual seminary, Liberty Theological Seminary, where we train up pastors, missionaries, church planters, you name it. As to your question, we have biblical worldview courses. We have courses on biblical theology. We have New Testament, Old Testament, Greek, Hebrew. All of those things are offered. I am not one of those admissions counselors that could walk you through exactly what those are. Mm-hmm. But there's entire degree tracks. And what's really cool about it is that we were the ones to pioneer this so long ago, 40 years ago. Distance learning was something that Dr. Falwell had pioneered. So one of my encouragements to anybody listening, you want to continue or further your education, look at Liberty Online, because so much of and it's fully accredited, guys. That's the other thing. But so much of what we do is enable you to stay in your job, continue working, serve your church, be in your community. You don't have to uproot and leave and move halfway across the country, but you can have the convenience of all of this stuff. And that's really important. So great question. I probably didn't answer it directly, but go to liberty.edu to find out more.
Yeah. Good question. Thanks, Tom. We have Paula on the line from Oklahoma. Paula, welcome to Real Truth for Today.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I had a question on the best organizations you would recommend other than Liberty, and I am a graduate in the master's program of Liberty. Great program for education. I only got mine in education. But I had a question about the fact that I keep hearing people talk about Islam and Muslims, but they never mention Sharia law, which I know is in complete violation to the Constitution of the United States. And our students are not taught the Constitution. And I am looking at Patriot Academy that teaches the reasoning why our founding fathers wrote the Constitution, and it's a draw out of the biblical text of exactly how the Lord Jesus and God set up his government. The three at the front, education. Anyway, and I would love, I love it to be educational. And we had a superintendent here that was really putting in the biblical text, and they apparently there was some individuals that evidently didn't want. I don't know what happened, and it's very hush-hush what happened. That he was silenced and took out, and he probably chose to be taken out because they was probably doing something other than that. But anyway, I wanted to put in the Patriot Academy, even as a volunteer to the public schools here in Oklahoma, and that's one thing. But I want you to recommend, if you will, organizations that you think would be best for the citizen to be in, like Act for America, Brigitte, whatever, how do you pronounce her name, or even maybe the Patriot Academy, parents teaching as a volunteer.
Paula, let's let him comment on that. So, Ryan?
Yeah. So, by the way, I know Rick Green. He's a good friend of mine. We're actually going to have Rick Green. He's the executive director or the president of Patriot Academy. We're hosting him actually in October at our conference here at Liberty University. And so I'm very grateful to them. I've actually been out there near Austin where their campus is. They do so much when it comes to biblical citizenship training. The other organization is Wall Builders. I really appreciate what the Bartons are doing, Dave and Timothy Barton. Timothy Barton's actually going to be here this fall as well. Listen, Turning Point. I love what Turning Point is doing. Turning Point and Turning Point Faith, very good friends with Lucas Miles, and they're serious. They've about developing curriculum. They've also got an educators component. I saw more recently where Erwin Lutzer was Moody Bible for so long, Al Mohler. I mean, they're speaking now at Turning Point education conferences, and this thing is developing. We're getting better at having resources available for parents, even grandparents, having resources available for young students. So many alternatives exist more today than probably ever before. But there are a lot of organizations. There's an organization right there in your neck of the woods, Jeff, called Counteract USA. These are young, sort of college-age girls that are reaching out to the next generation, Christian, evangelical. I think they're based out of Bentonville, Arkansas. But there's so many organizations, Young Women of America, I would say Students for Life, White Rose Resistance.
Yeah,
Seth Gruber's a good friend of mine. And so there's a lot of organizations that are reaching young people. And I would just say pick one and support it. They need your support because they are doing the Lord's work.
Amen to that. Thank you, Paula. We have David on the line from Michigan. David, welcome to Real Truth for Today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We have Liberty University, Hillsdale, Wall Builders, all of these, Turning Point, all the groups that you've mentioned. But practically, we have 3 months until voting at the midterm. We need a nationwide wake up sleeper, wake up church. If the church voted, we would change the world. What can we practically do in 3 months? I mean, AFA is big in this, but how do we reach all of the pastors? How do we become Paul Revere's? I felt so futile, like I am powerless to do anything. But I started a Bible study this summer with about 10 young men between 25 and 35, and we're working on marriages and accountability. We're working through the book Fighting Shadows. That's something I can do immediately, but this is a wake-up call, and taking a semester's class this fall, it's not going to cut it for what we have to do.
Yeah, great question, David. Ryan?
Yeah, so we were talking earlier, and I could not agree more. This is not the time in an election cycle to become a professor, to become a.
Yeah. We'll hopefully get him back. But, he's exactly right. So it's not the time to pontificate or to become a philosopher. It's the time for action. So here would be my answer to that, David. We need to get pastors especially, because they have, week by week, they have an opportunity to speak to their congregations and let them know what's going on. Now, obviously, we don't preach America, but we do preach the Scripture, and we do preach the morality that is found in the Bible, and we preach that, hey, the Bible intersects with all these things. So many issues that people say, well, that's political. Well, it's encroached into the area of biblical, and so we can speak to homosexuality, we can speak to transgenderism, we can speak to abortion, we can speak to the future of America and what we want to pass on to our children and our grandchildren, because we have that stewardship. And we're commanded, one generation shall share with the other generation. We're commanded to pass that baton, and we want to be able to pass the baton of freedom, to pass the baton of faith. And we preach the gospel, and the second greatest thing we do is make it easy, legal, free for us to do the greatest thing, and that is preach the gospel. If we lose that, we have nobody to blame but ourselves. Well, thanks for listening to Real Truth for today. Pastor Jeff Schreve here. Go out today, shine for Christ, and share what great things the Lord has done for you, and God will use you as His witness. God bless you.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.